Welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette, featuring sysadmin expert Don Pizzette, DevOps engineer Justin Dennison, security specialist Daniel Lowry, and Peter.
Well, that whole intro just feels like a lie today because we are missing Justin Dennison, who, Don, you said he's at the DMV, is that correct?
My homie.
Yeah.
Identity theft
shouldn't do that.
is real, but entire Justin theft is an all-new thing. So
Is that what happened?
yeah, he's gone.
Plus, those kidnappers had their hands full with Justin because he fought back.
So it was kind of like in that movie Taken. He called me and he was like, "They're in the building," and I said, "All right, just call me back later when you figure all that out."
I could just see him taking his shirt off, greasing himself up, and making a real problem for this.
Yeah.
I said, "I have a very special set of skills that do not pertain to the situation that you're in right now."
So I got to go do these
very
shows
much the
today.
opposite.
Well, we are joined, not that anyone can replace Justin, but we are joined today by Brad Hayes, who is the CTO over at Circadence. How you doing, Brad?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us and your plant as well. We wanted to first kind of Circadence. I actually met them at an AFCEA show and got to play the little. Have you played with the range before?
I have, yeah. I saw it. I think I actually saw it 2 years ago at InfoSec World. Yeah.
Okay. So people are probably at home saying, what are you talking about? So let's go ahead and get into our first segment, rapid fire questions, and find out what Circadence and Brad are all about.
Who do you work for?
What's new?
Who are you?
What's happening?
What's wrong with you?
All right. So I said I had a chance to play with the range, and people don't know what I'm talking about. So why don't you help us out and explain a little bit about what Circadence does and specifically what the cyber range is all about?
Absolutely. So Circadence is at heart a training and cyber education company. So our core product, our flagship product is this you mentioned cyber range called Project Ares. So a cyber range is basically a virtual clone of IT infrastructure. So we're talking about a high fidelity simulation where you have virtual machines networked together, everything's running, real copies of all of the software that you'd expect to be finding on those machines. You experience network traffic akin to having people actually using those machines. So we like to think of it more as a training ground that you can set up kind of however you want without actually damaging your real infrastructure. And so on top of that, we build these learning environments where we have these sort of gamified scenarios where people are accomplishing objectives. We have live in-game help to kind of guide people along and really just try to ratchet up the engagement so that people are better equipped to actually absorb the information that they're trying to learn.
Now, it seems like you do a lot of this stuff as we've looked at your site and everything and talked to you guys before. It's really cool, your cyber range. It seems to be very geared toward the military, but is it also available to private organizations?
Absolutely. So while we do have nation-state customers, we actually find a lot of benefit for both enterprise and academia. In fact, the University of Colorado Boulder uses Project Ares in one of their cybersecurity classes, and we're seeing Project Ares be adopted in cyber competitions like cyber gaming. So I would argue that this is a fantastic use case for Project Ares where we can train the next generation of cyber professional. And that happens pretty much everywhere, right? So outside of government, outside of enterprise, also within academia as well.
Now, I know the one that I got to mess around with was one that I think it was actually targeted towards a military program. And it was really cool because you had a video that popped up and it was a lady, she kind of gave me my mission. And then you had a mixture of network maps and virtual machines that were popping up. And I thought it was neat because we've seen labs where there's just virtual machines. You get dumped in there and you do a job, but having a story behind it, a narrative, and all that was really cool. What I saw were just security ones, though, like labs for security admins, security officers. And at the time, because this was like 2 years ago, they said they were about to branch out into other system administration and other types of areas. Did you guys ever get there, or is it still focused on security?
No, we did. So we have a bunch of different learning paths that map to NIST NICE roles. And we've just rolled out badging and achievements. And as you mentioned, a lot of these kind of gamified elements to keep people engaged and really encourage this learning process. So we find that that's quite motivating to keep people involved in coming back to the simulation. We have artificial adversaries, so like opponents that you might find in the game, just so that running the same mission is never quite going to be the same experience for you, to keep you coming back to reinforce those lessons.
So one of the cool things I know in the video game world, which is kind of, we're doing a little crossover here, is the ability to create your own levels and build boards. And I noticed that you have something called the Battle Room Builder. So is that what's going on with that? And people can kind of customize it for their experience?
Absolutely. So that's one of the, from my perspective, one of the really cool aspects of this is that we've made it really easy for people to develop their own content so that you can really training experience to your own organization. So in that case, we have these tools that people can use where they can just drag and network infrastructure down, and with that, they can inject their own scenarios into Project Ares.
And our final question is always, Brad, what is your problem?
I would say my problem is trying to make education scalable, right? So getting out of classroom-based static presentation style learning and into this kind of engaging, dynamic kind of environment. And so that involves a lot of really interesting problems in AI, machine learning, in content delivery, and natural language understanding. All kinds of interesting fields in AI and machine learning come together for this.
God, I'm really impressed. He actually took that question seriously.
Yeah, like seriously.
Most people want to fight me.
I was like, I was waiting for like questionable surfing habits or
like,
something.
well, what's your problem? Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, Circadence looks really cool, and getting to play with it is a lot of fun. So, I'm enjoying seeing what's coming out of there and what you guys come up with in the future. And you can probably help a lot of the companies we're going to talk about today, especially the one in our next segment here, which is Who Got Pwned?
Looks like you're about to get pwned.
Fatality.
Yeah!
So this is someone that, Don, you were mentioning we've actually seen problems with before, and I'll give you the headline here from TechCrunch.com. LabCorp, security lapse exposed thousands of medical documents. And you said this was not the first time that LabCorp has let people know all about my blood.
Yeah, it's, LabCorp, if you're not familiar with them, I think most people probably are, is an organization used by a ton of different hospitals, but also employers, people who do like workplace drug testing, the random drug testing. Random here for us is we just pick Peter and send him off every couple of months.
Again?
There's
no
totally
profiling
random.
here at all.
Yeah.
It's
Totally,
completely
totally
random.
So they handle doing a lot of the testing. So they're somewhat outsourced for these organizations, but that means they have a lot of medical records, and it's not the same relationship that you would have with like your general practice medical whatever your
Doctor.
primary physician,
care,
whatever, somebody that you see repeatedly throughout the year. Here, it's some disconnected company you don't really think about, but they've got all your medical results, the results of your tests, quite a bit of data, especially things like Social Security number, because they use that for billing. And that's actually what happened to LabCorp back in 2017, is that the collection agency they were using, which I've forgotten the name of them, like AMCA or something like that.
It was Bob's collection agency.
It's somewhere here in the article, I'm sure, where the collections company got breached. And so all the collections data, well, the people who are doing collections, they do dings on your credit report. So they have your mailing address, your account numbers, your Social Security number, because they use that for the credit reporting side of things. Well, this time, it's not the subsidiary organization or whatever they got popped. LabCorp had a CRM. So they had a customer database, just a management suite that was for internal use, but it was exposed to the internet.
And how did they say how that happened? Like, did somebody just wire it up or just hook it into the web app? Or
So they haven't said, but the odds are that they leverage a lot of remote employees because they have people all over the world. So they probably just said, look, it's got SSL. It's a secure web page.
you're good to go.
People can log in remotely and access the customer data. Only employees would do it.
That's right. I'm going to set a super awesome password called, winter 2020
Yeah.
exclamation point.
So
That's what
what is
makes
that
it
from?
safe.
That's from something. Winter 2020? I've seen that before.
Yeah, it's like a common password. That's
All right, well.
Yeah, because you have to change your password every 90
right.
days, so you can just
and
change it
people
with
just
the
go,
season.
oh, it's this.
That would give you 4 passwords a year.
Yeah,
There
spring
you go.
2020.
And it's extremely common.
Well, if you stick an exclamation point on the end, it's okay, right?
That's what makes it safe. Hello.
Well, the winter, you'd make the
You'll
I an
never
exclamation
guess
point.
that.
Oh,
Yeah, and
Peter,
the
taking
E's
up
a
notch.
3.
That actually would make it much more secure,
Leet speed.
but not secure enough.
Sorry.
So in this case, though, it's a matter of they had an internal system exposed to the internet. The system had a vulnerability. Even if it didn't have a vulnerability, an attacker probably could have fished their way into it. And once they gained access to it, they had access to roughly 7.7 million patients worth of data.
Oh, I was afraid it was going to be a lot.
Yeah, I mean, small compared to some. Although, there were differing numbers that were batted about because they were saying about 10,000 documents were exposed.
Well, this
to, like,
7.7 million
documents, right?
that you're looking at, Don,
that from the prior
that's talking
breach?
about. Well, that's saying that there's a breach in June.
That was
related
the
to-
previous breach.
Oh,
Well, that's
great.
credit card
This
data.
breach, I think they were saying that they verified up to 10,000.
10,000 documents.
Yeah.
As that's what they know so far. But those documents are things like medical test reports, which is pretty bad.
What I love about this is like they're saying now, oh yeah, hand in the cookie jar, we got breached, yeah, but it's only like 10,000 records, and then like 2 weeks they'll come out and go, it's like 100,000 records, and
more.
A couple of them other weeks they'll, it's like 6
Yeah, and then it's not the headline anymore.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So no one cares.
Hey, Brad, is this the kind of thing like that people could gamify basically with Circadence? I mean, I guess that thing would be, all right, your first mission, put a good password, or don't put this
Well,
on
I
the
mean,
internet.
with Circadence, you'd be able to like, or let me ask it this way: could you build a very similar environment? Let's say I was LabCorp. Could I go to Circadence and say, I'm going to make a very similar environment to what we see in our production environment, and then test against that?
Absolutely. And in fact, that's the original spirit behind releasing our mission builder, is so that you could duplicate your infrastructure, and then you could run web scraping on it. Really, you could do whatever you need to kind of do to test it.
Which is legal now.
And in this case, it seems like this should have been discoverable because I believe some web crawler indexed one of the critical records, and then by incrementing the ID, you can just access the rest of them.
I can just Google it now.
Yeah, you could definitely see that.
I just keep thinking like medical web scraping is now legal in our state.
Would you rather have your credit card information stolen, or your health information
I'll go health information any day of the week because I don't have a lot.
of health?
I'm kind of in the same boat on the health information side,
Yeah.
but there's some things. It depends on what that information is.
Like if they know that I have colorectal cancer, I mean,
Sure.
that sucks, but
So like I wouldn't dream of using 23andMe, right? Because
I would never use it again.
so
one and done
Yeah,
for
fool me
Peter.
once.
your DNA, right? The technology is not necessarily there now, but in the future, I imagine somebody would be able to take DNA and figure out your fingerprint,
Right.
or something. And that's something that once it's out there, you're just screwed. It's out, right? Versus a credit card, I can get another credit card number.
Yeah, could they clone a hand based off of your DNA and grow a finger to like
It worked in the movies.
kill people?
Well, let's.
Don, you murderer, you.
We've got a lot of news to talk about, so let's go ahead and
You
get
shut
to
your
that.
mouth.
But first, we're gonna take a quick break. I'm gonna Google if you can actually make a fingerprint from my DNA, and we'll be right back on the Technado with Don Pezet right after this break.
An IT team that's upskilled and ready for any challenge. How do you get there? Join thousands of other IT leaders and let IT Pro TV be your resource. With more than 4,000 hours of IT training, IT Pro TV gives your team a resource to go to. The most popular vendors: CompTIA, Microsoft, Cisco, Linux, Apple, AWS, and more. The hottest tech, cloud, security, networking, and more. What's next for your organization? Whether it's an implementation, cloud migration, more workstation support, or new technology, you're covered. With IT Pro TV, you can rest easy. Your team will always be ready. It's binge-worthy learning for IT pros. Get a free trial for your team today. Visit www.itpro.tv/business.
All right, welcome back to Technado with Don Pezet. It's time to get to news. Reminder, we have our guest Brad Hayes with us from Circadence, and he's going to help us out as we unpack all of this stuff. We talked about all of our fluids being out there on the internet. And speaking of being out, Ginni Rometty is out as CEO of IBM, and its cloud boss is replacing her. And is that just an indication of how important cloud is now to companies that's the person that you move up?
I think so. Although in this case, they keep calling him their cloud boss, but he's really not so much cloud, right? Like when you think of cloud, who's the number one cloud provider? Right?
That would be Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon, AWS, right? We don't need science for that. We just know
We
they
don't
have
need
a
science for
dominant
that.
market share. Microsoft Azure, big player in the cloud space. But when I say IBM, what's the name of IBM's cloud service?
IBM Cloud Service?
When you don't even know the name of it.
Was that wrong?
I don't
know.
Watson Cloud?
I don't think it has a name. See, Watson, a lot of people think of Watson, which doesn't really make IBM much money. Years ago, IBM was a hardware company.
You
They
can
had
only
their-
make so much money winning Jeopardy.
Well, that's true. And playing Go, that weird checker
yeah,
game
yeah,
they
yeah.
keep
Yeah.
playing. I don't understand why they keep doing that. How that's a revenue stream.
I
at
believe
all.
that's how they tried to monetize Watson.
It's a Twitch
Game
stream
show.
of
to play this
Watson
game
playing
nobody's
Go.
ever heard of.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it beat the Go champion.
Yeah.
I don't know what Go is.
Congrats.
So, but
Mentos.
it does remind me of Microsoft, where after Steve Ballmer was out, they brought in Satya Nadella. They brought in a developer, somebody who was more in touch with what was going on. And the changes Microsoft has made have made a huge difference. So the new guy coming in as the CEO, he is based on their cloud division. His name is Arvind Krishna. He's been active inside of IBM for a while. But the real exciting part about this announcement, in my opinion, is not who the new CEO is, but who the new president of IBM is, which is Jim Whitehurst, a name that might be familiar to you viewers or listeners as the CEO of Red Hat, the people who make Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Red Hat has been making huge gains over the years with RHEL, but also with Ansible and a number of their other products that are out there. Their investment in OpenStack didn't really pan out because Kubernetes kicked its butt, but a lot of the other areas they did were doing really, really well successful. So in terms of a cloud presence, Red Hat has actually made bigger gains in the cloud than IBM has. And so the rumor mill is just really kicking up. A lot of people were worried that when IBM acquired Red Hat, that it was going to basically kill off Red Hat, that it'd become the next OS2, and I'd have more boxes to line my shelf in my office. But now it's actually looking like Red Hat is somewhat in position to take over IBM, even though IBM was the acquirer. So, with Jim Whitehurst becoming the president, he is now in a command position inside of IBM with their cloud offerings. They're already present in AWS, already present in Azure. You can spin up RHEL machines and services. So it's a real big shift, and it's interesting to see. I'm curious to see where that'll play out.
And if it doesn't work out with them, then they can get Billy Williams from Billy's Ribs and Operating Systems. He'll work out great. I think he'll do well in that position.
Billy's Ribs and Operating, so that would be abbreviated BROS.
See, the guy's got a platform.
Yeah, that's telling you, marketing genius.
He's just waiting to take over this
What
space.
was the security tool, Bro? They
Oh, yeah, Bro.
renamed
It works
Zeek,
with
right?
Snort.
Is it,
Yeah.
is
Is it Zeek now?
Or what is?
I don't know if they renamed it. That's blue team stuff, man.
I thought they decided that the term "bro" was offensive to some, so they renamed.
I would not be surprised.
Yeah, it's
I know that Zeek is a product. I'm just not sure whether or not Bro evolved into Zeek.
It did. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, because bro was offensive to chicks.
So it's funny, like that terminology, chick means girl. It is.
Well, sure,
it is
in
a
the-
Spanglish
in the chicken
of
sense.
chica.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought chick meant a baby chicken.
No, it does not. That is
well, it also does.
that is an internet lie.
All right.
Don't think that's right.
It is right because I looked it up.
But people called baby chickens chicks before the internet.
They did call baby, but they did not call girls chicks based off of them looking like baby chickens or being reminded of baby chickens. It came out of like Texarkana or wherever, Texas and Mexico.
I feel this is a good time to remind people to look back for our women in tech interviews that we've done recently. And
Which also had nothing to do with chickens.
No, zero chickens were involved,
So
except for the eating of them.
going back on topic,
Please.
which we've somewhat lost at this point,
please, God.
which is the IBM takeover basically by Red Hat. Really cool to see that. Red Hat is still the most successful commercial enterprise Linux offering that's out there. They generate more revenues than Canonical and Ubuntu, even though that's a little more popular in most people's eyes. It's really impressive. I'm curious to see where it'll go, and hopefully it's like Microsoft, where they really turn things around and make a really big difference. Maybe we'll see IBM being a bigger player in the next few years.
Sounds good.
Going to bring back the AS400 in mainstream America.
Well, that's the other rumor mill is that IBM kind of has two divisions right now. So there's the services division, and then there's the legacy division, which are their mainframes. And several people are saying they might sell off that mainframe division in the next couple of years.
And they're wicked expensive too. Like
Always.
Don and I worked with a mainframe back in an insurance farm bureau, and it was like $1 million a year for access to that.
Yeah, because they charged based on your CPU utilization, like how many teraflops or whatever a month you were processing. Yeah, it was ridiculous. Yeah.
All right, let's head over to our next article here from tomshardware.com, and I don't know if I'm going to try to pronounce this, but
come on, go for it.
China made. It's just, I mean, we've already offended women in this episode. Now,
how have we offended women?
Offended a billion people. China made.
Are you offending women? Is that what you're doing?
Yes, probably. Every day.
Every day.
Okay, let me try this again. China made Zhaoxin CPU hits retail market.
That was horrible.
100% made in China. How would you pronounce that?
I don't want to upstage.
You wouldn't.
Yeah. So I know that you would do something like that to try to like save yourself, but I'm not going to be your scapegoat.
Appreciate that. So, okay, my question on this article is, and maybe I'm a simple person here, but aren't all computers kind of made in China right now?
Okay, so
wow, really?
Aren't most
really?
Yes.
Wow.
Well,
really?
So a lot of them are, but Intel has manufacturing plants in Thailand and Malaysia. Actually, a lot of what we get is coming from Malaysia. A year or two ago in China, we've got this whole thing going on with election tampering and other stuff that's been reported on. Countries just aren't trusting of each other anymore. And so a lot of countries are starting to say, you know what, we want hardware and we want software that's developed entirely in our country.
Well, like Huawei. Like there was the whole thing, I think, this last week where the European Union is using Huawei for some of the 5G.
Heck of a gas station, I must say.
That's Huawei. Both make subs, but
that's an internet lie.
That's an internet lie.
Yeah.
So yeah, Huawei is a great example of that. On the operating system side, several countries, North Korea did it several years ago, where they said, you know what, we're going to make our own operating system. So that way we know no other country has backdoors or other ways to get in, and we can trust it because we made it ourselves. China did the same thing. So they have a version of Linux, the name is escaping me right now. I think they were actually calling it Red Linux or something at one point. But we'll call it the People's Linux.
The People's.
And so they've created
the People's
that.
Republic of Linux.
And now they've gone a step further to say, you know what, we need CPUs. They need to be x86. They need to be Intel compatible CPUs. But that doesn't mean they have to rely on Intel to design it. There's open docs on how to design those processors. So they now have a CPU that is entirely designed and built inside of China. And that means it doesn't have things like the management engine, right? The Intel ME that has been widely compromised and is a part of Spectre and Ghost and all
so
those
when
guys.
you say 100% build, you mean every component, the chips and all that stuff is coming.
The whole
They're
thing.
manufacturing from raw material, right?
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep, and they know exactly what is inside that chip so that they can trust it. Now, the real question here is the flip side, like, can we trust it? So just
Probably
because
not.
they can trust it, you might have, it is a communist / fascist government over there. So they certainly do track all the various activities that are going on.
Yeah, there's one cable that just comes out of the back of this. It just goes directly to the Capitol.
So in the article, they mentioned the cost on it, right? And they say in there, because I thought, and I was like, I might order one of these just to have fun with it and try it out. And they were saying that it was $620, but when I actually pulled it up before the show, it was just $40.
What?
I'm sorry.
Is this a Raspberry?
40
like
US dollars.
40 USD.
It says 4,300 yen, and
4,300 yen.
So Brad, as the
says it's
CTO there,
equivalent to 620.
are you considering maybe just replacing all of the servers with these then at this price point?
So probably not. Although I would say doing hardware virtualization is within spec for us. So we work with a bunch of different kinds of hardware that we virtualize. So it's not totally out of the question to imagine in the future we could emulate this. But I don't think we're looking to ask our
So
cloud partner.
eventually I'll be able to use Cylance to figure out how China's going to pwn my company and using their
Circadence.
or
I'm sorry, Circadence. I always get the two. I always want to say
Starts with a
Cylance.
C.
Yeah. But yeah, Circadence to create that battleground.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on it anytime. It's not really the top priority for us right now.
Politician's answer.
Until Google goes,
So,
we're using these.
For $40, though, I think it would be cool to just buy one of these and fire it up and have a network sniffer attached to it. Just see, is there any exfiltration going on whatsoever? And some of these are really sophisticated where they don't exfiltrate data, but they leave a way to get in. So it's a triggered response. So it could sit there idle, not transmitting anything, and then an attacker does the right action to wake that up.
So it's like a backdoor.
Yeah.
Like just sitting there going.
Certainly possible. And we already know the U.S. government has done stuff like this, so it's not even a stretch to think that another government would as well.
So does China have its own like Linux distro, or
You just said it was Red, right? Red.
Yeah, I
Linux or
can't remember
whatever?
the name. Let me look it up real quick. Because
I think you're running it, Peter.
Oh yeah.
let's see. So there's Kylin. Oh, Red Flag Linux. That's what I was.
Red Flag.
I said Red. It's Red Flag Linux was the one they made. But there's also Kylin, which I had not heard of until this Google search.
Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren Linux.
Yeah.
See?
I would not trust that either.
Yeah.
It's just anytime you type a command, it does rm -r/.
I don't trust anybody who wears a completely flat mask because where does your nose go?
That's a great
right.
point.
Yeah. It's not a real nose.
Great
It
point.
doesn't,
All right, let's head over to our next article at ZDNet.com. The Chrome Web Store is currently facing a wave of fraudulent transactions. Google temporarily suspends publishing and updating of paid Chrome extensions following a spike in fraudulent transactions. So we had an opera story the other week about their move to predatory loans, and
As one does.
And now we've got fraudulent apps popping up in the web store. Those are not
Well,
coming from
This
Chrome.
one's a little different.
Yeah.
And this one actually has me a little more worried than the other one, mostly because of Google's response. Like, Google has identified fraud occurring inside of the Chrome Web Store, and apparently they can't stop it. So their action has been to completely shut down the ability of any paid plugin or paid extension from being able to update. That's pretty drastic, and it's been going on for over a week now. So a situation like that tells me there's more information here that we're not getting. And the fact that Google hasn't fixed it means this is a bigger problem. So the deal here is that apparently it affects all paid applications. And if you've used the Chrome Web Store, you know that mostly it's full of completely free extensions. You install an ad blocker or some thing that enhances a web page, adds some extra features, those kind of plugins.
I have my Amazon plugin that tracks everything that I'm doing and suggests a product, and then my coupon one, Honey.
Yeah, that's a good one. So that one had the breach last year, right?
Again, I'm not
That's why
on.
you're in Have I Been Pwned?
I have not
right?
been pwned.
So good point. Good point.
We should just get him his own website called I Have Been Pwned.
Have either of you ever bought a Chrome extension though?
No.
Or Brad, you
negative.
remote? Have you ever bought a Chrome extension?
No, I've not.
What do you use, Chrome?
I do.
Okay, I was gonna say he's like I'm an Edge guy.
It's the most popular browser. So I've actually bought 2 Chrome extensions. One was a Chrome Remote Desktop, so a Windows Remote Desktop client that is built into Chrome, which is useful if you're on a Chromebook. So if you're ever on a Chromebook, it doesn't have an RDP client. You could use the one built into Chrome. I think it cost $10. And then there was another one that I've been racking my brain to remember what it was called.
Was it Push Bullet? Did you buy Push Bullet?
No, not as an extension.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I bought that separate. But it was it let you mirror an Android phone on your computer.
That's kind of sweet.
Wes uses it. Cherokee uses it. What is it called?
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about because I've seen Wes use it in this show.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but it also costs like $10, right? So you go into the Chrome Web Store, you install the plugin, you run it, and then you make a payment, right? That payment is actually going through the Chrome Web Store, and that's the part where Google is seeing lots of fraudulent charges through the plugin. So attackers have somehow figured out a way to make your Chrome extensions that you've already got, right? Commercial ones that you trust, that they're able to generate fraudulent charges. So there must be some kind of drive-by website attack, or something like that that's being leveraged. And their only solution so far has been to not disable payments, but disable updating of those plugins. And so that tells me that the attackers are somehow modifying the plugins and pushing them as an update and then causing those charges to be attributed somewhere else. But we just don't have a lot of details on it. So this is definitely something we want to keep an eye on and find out what's going on there. But it is a pretty heavy hand that they've applied for this fix to shut down every commercial app.
The other Chrome extension we all use, LastPass.
Yeah, that one actually doesn't count as a paid extension, though.
Well, it's not paid, yeah, but
because
we were
you
talking
don't
about
pay
what-
through it. Yeah, but there was another password one. I think 1Password where you could pay for it through the extensions. That one did get
All Pass?
It's in the article. Yeah.
So basically, if you don't have any
Dashlane.
paid
Yeah.
extensions, this is not something you need to worry about.
Right. Yeah. I mean, on a grand scale, you need to worry about it because here's a problem even Google's having a hard time solving. But on a small scale, you wouldn't worry about it. And in my case, since I've already paid for those apps, I'm not worried about it. But at this point, I would not recommend buying any extensions right now until Google's got it sorted out.
Done. Fine. I won't do it.
I'll put the halt on all my extension buying I was going to go for.
You were going to go crazy. You were saving up.
Man, I had this list. And it's like $600 worth of extensions.
Your Amazon shopping cart, your wish list.
I was getting ready to pull the trigger. And then this
All right. I'm looking at this next one here, and honestly, I feel like I'm just looking at code with this website. So this is at lwn.net. I thought like maybe the page didn't load, and this is what it said in response, because this news article is less than a paragraph. Unpleasant vulnerability in OpenSMTPD. Is unpleasant the name of it, or they're just commenting on
that it's
their feelings about it?
They're actually commenting on that it is an unpleasant thing. It's not, it's not the name
Because,
of it.
I mean, these names are ridiculous for things. So we're calling this one the unpleasant vulnerability.
All right. So this vulnerability, the big news when you see this on most sites, they're advertising that it is a vulnerability in OpenBSD, and that's a big deal. So the OpenBSD operating system is developed with security in mind. It's one of the few OSs that's focused on security first, features second. And they have been really, really successful with it. I've been following OpenBSD for a long, long time. And if you go to their homepage right now, if you go to openbsd.org, they have a little note right underneath their logo, and it says, only 2 remote holes in the default install in a heck of a long time. So they used to put on there, like when I started with them, it was 0 remote installs in 5 years.
So this is like 10 days since the last accident kind of sign?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And so then they went to 1 because there was a remote hole, and then a second one was found later on. So then it said just 2 remote holes found in 10 years, 15 years. And finally they said, the years don't really matter anymore. Let's get rid of that. And so now they just say in a heck of a long time. Well, this one doesn't count as a remote hole in the default install, but it does count as a hole in the default install that can easily become remote if you're not careful. So this is as close as we get to one of these really bad vulnerabilities in OpenBSD. But the thing I want to stress for the listeners out there is, while OpenBSD is certainly affected here, there are several operating systems, including Debian, that use OpenSMTPD, and this affects all of them. So if you use OpenSMTPD, you need to update soon. And the way this vulnerability works is the mailer daemon is running in the background, and it does input sanitization. So when it receives an email, the username portion of the email address is sanitized. It removes special characters and things. And then the domain portion of the address is sanitized, and it removes special characters and things. Well, what they found was if you leave the domain empty, that the input sanitization on the username would escape some of the characters instead of sanitizing them out and allow them to leak through. So by kind of malforming the email header, they were able to actually get it to send commands via the username. And then OpenSMTPD on the back end would just run it as its credentialed account for the service, and then it would execute those in the shell. And so they did a proof of concept where they just ran like the sleep command and actually got it to execute. And then people went a little bit further and showed how they could do various scripts and things to add user accounts and other things to the system, which makes it really bad. The limiting factor here is that OpenSMTPD in its default config will only accept connections from localhost. So it's installed by default, but it's only accepting local connections. So that's why it's not a remote hole. But what's the first thing we do when setting up a mail server?
You expose it to the internet so people can use it.
That's right. And now it's a remote hole. So that's why this one is as close as you can get to actually having a remote hole in that default install.
So Brad, I'm curious how you guys do this when there's new vulnerabilities and things like this. Are you constantly kind of just updating the battlefield to add these things, or do you wait and see if they're a big deal, or what's that process like for you guys?
So I mean, it's a little bit flexible. On the one hand, for the different battle rooms and missions that we have people have available for people in project areas, we're not regulating how they go about it, accomplishing them. So if there are multiple ways to do maybe like a remote code execution, then we don't kind of funnel them down any particular route. However, as these new techniques come out, we can incorporate them into our adversaries, and we can have our in-game AI suggest it to people if they look like they're getting stuck. So it is a pretty straightforward process to update the content and to have all these new vulnerabilities as they are exposed incorporated into the experience.
Because most of the stuff that the people are doing in there are more of a blue team kind of thing. It's more defending than attacking.
So we have a pretty good balance. And in some cases, we do have symmetric missions where you're the blue team in one version of it and you're the red team in the other version of it.
Okay, so we can see how to utilize one of these vulnerabilities and how to also make sure you're patched.
That's kind of fun. You almost have like a competition at that point.
Yeah. That'd be a great game.
Yeah. It in practice, it turns out to be really fun, especially when you consider that you can, if you have this automated adversary, you can just go and train on that anytime. Or we could set it up so that you have 2 human teams working on the cyber range. So again, virtual infrastructure, but now you're kind of wargaming against each other.
I really enjoy your platform because of the customization of it, being able to build out specific environments and they have, you can say, add these vulnerabilities or whatever. And then again, try to go back to that back and forth blue team versus red team kind of thing, make a game of it. Whereas typically when you find other cyber ranges, they are just like, oh, here's a range, learn skills, which is helpful.
Yeah.
But having that ability for a company or an organization to say, I want it to look like this, because that's going to give us a much more close emulation to what we see in our actual production environment. That's the big key with what you guys have going on.
I'll tell you my approach in the cyber range would be just going straight down the middle. You'll see
That's
me
where the
coming,
action is.
but can I get there in time? All right, let's move to our next article over at ZDNet.com. Hackers are hijacking smart building access systems to launch DDoS attacks. More than 2,300 building access systems can be hijacked due to a severe vulnerability left without a fix. So is this saying that people aren't hacking into these systems so they can access these buildings physically, but they're accessing these systems so they can use those as a botnet? So now your door and your AC system is...
Yeah, I think both are true,
Okay.
right? So the deal here, remember, I believe it was last year that there was a casino that got hacked, and it was because outside attackers were able to compromise like a thermostat, and via that thermostat, that was their springboard to then target other items inside of the organization. But what if, put yourself in the shoes of a hacker,
Okay.
you find a network, they've exposed their building access system to the internet. It's got 10 published CVEs that have not been patched by the vendor. So you already know the way to walk right into it. You compromise it. And then you look at your network, or at their network, and there's really nothing of value. It's a stupid company, right?
Just a bunch of IoT devices.
So what do you do? Is I wasted my time, move on to the next one? No, you say,
mine
you know what?
Bitcoin.
So a building access system is
Yeah,
not
it's
going
not
to
gonna
run
run
for crap.
that, yeah.
But it could start shooting out spam email. It could start looking for other vulnerable systems. You could put it to use. And that's exactly what they're doing, is they're saying, all right, I might not be able to use this building access system to get at any really good, juicy data, but let me just use it as part of my botnet for doing distributed denial of service. Most people, like, if my computer starts to run slow, I suspect something is wrong, right? And so now there's an indicator, a warning. But the building access control, as long as I swipe my card and the door light turns green and I get to come in, I don't think about whether it's running slow or not. So it
if
could
it's
be doing
smoking, because it is mining Bitcoin, it
The
still
heck
let
is
me
this
in.
thing doing?
Yeah.
it could be doing God only knows what. And in a lot of companies, especially the really, really large organizations, the building access system usually falls under the facilities team and not the IT team. And so a lot of IT departments aren't even looking at it. In this scenario, these access key systems should be isolated. They should not be exposed to the internet. They shouldn't be on your regular network. They should be on their own dedicated out-of-band network, because why would they talk to the internet?
Aren't there systems like
So that you can
where you can set times and remote unlock the doors or things like that?
Yeah, so we have that. We have a Sonatrol system here in this building.
Go ahead and give it all
And-
away, Don.
I know. And the IP address is
Here's how you get access to that.
so it runs on a box back there, and I don't know what operating system it runs. I don't know if it's been updated or not, right?
Yeah.
But it is isolated. It has its own WAN connection.
Yeah,
so
I
it's-
let that guy in the other day, so he updated it.
He wore a shirt that
Yeah, he had
said
shirt. It said
Good to go.
It said doors on it.
Doors.
So-
iFixdoors.com.
Yeah. Is that wrong?
He had like 5 key cards on his belt. It was fine.
My bad.
So, so in that case, though, it's got its own, I think it's like a DSL line or whatever that runs to it. So it's really not a part of our network at all. So if it gets compromised and our access control system goes crazy, I have to take a key out of my pocket instead of using my key card. So that's not the end of the world. But
I thought we just got to go home if the doors don't open.
That's it. You can't get in.
Oh, yeah. You get to go home.
I'm out.
Probably forever.
I bet. Hey, Brad, do you think you could work us into to one of the cyber ranges that we've got a botnet from our door access system here that.
So, I mean, this compromise of IoT devices is definitely a very real concern, and especially depending on how you've configured it to your network. So as you kind of mentioned, it doesn't necessarily always make sense to have these things exposed to the broader internet, and usually people aren't really that concerned about what it's doing internally, as long as, like you said, the light turns green when you flash your card. So these are real scenarios that you have to watch out for, particularly the scenario where somebody just kind of finds something, buys it off of Craigslist or whatever, and then brings it onto your network. Like these are definite problems that we see in commercial entities.
How would you lab that up? Like if I had a SCADA system or like some kind of proprietary
He has drag
system.
and drop FOSS cams. You just put them in there.
Well, if FOSS would be a great example.
Yeah.
So, if it's a proprietary system, how would you build a lab for something like that? Because obviously you couldn't, have a whole control panel virtualized, I suppose.
So for the software aspects of that, we can do some virtualization, right? So again, you don't have physical access to the device, but as long as like packets come in, packets come out, and it resembles the actual hardware entity, we can virtualize those kinds of things.
That sounds like a pretty involved process. Like you'd really have to understand how that device worked, but
Yeah.
it'd be valuable on a large enough scale.
You can buy PCLs, can't you? Like, it's not like they're controlled purchases.
What's PCL?
It's the programmable, or PLCs, the programmable module that run
What was
SCADA
that word?
systems. They're the
The control boards,
Yeah,
I
the
mean, you
control
can buy them,
boards.
but to do it at scale, right? To have a
Right.
virtual lab, you'd really have to have it virtualized.
Oh yeah, for a virtual lab. I just meant
And-
for like testing and
Yeah, I'm
and
thinking
things of
like
that nature.
if I worked for a nuclear power plant,
Yeah.
and I wanted to train my employees on securing the systems and stuff, I'd want it to closely mirror that. But they're so proprietary. But like Brad said, if you understood all the traffic that those devices generate, you could emulate that.
I read I think it was Kaspersky did a study on how many of these devices are actually connected to the internet, and they did a scan of like 10,000 devices, and they found like 9,000 devices
Jeez.
connected to the because they were hooking up like cell cards to them, going, I don't have to go out and check this thing in an oil field and make this ride. I can put a cell card on it. I can check it from my car just off the highway.
And there have been attacks on the power
Yeah.
grid and the utilities grids here in the U.S.
And they were susceptible to things like SQL injections and command injections and to all the normal things because they would have like a web-based front end.
Were you with me when I was talking to the team over at Grim Cyber?
Maybe,
So
probably.
the people over at Grim Cyber, they're pen testers, and they were telling me a story about how they went to what's it called? The power plants that use water to generate power.
Hydroelectric?
Yeah, a hydroelectric plant,
hydroelectric,
whatever that's
yeah.
called. Oh, I guess that.
That,
So,
yes.
so they were at one of those, and they ran an IP scan, it was Nmap, right?
Yeah.
And did a port scan across the network, and they hit an IP controller for one of the generators, and it burned out. Like it was not
From a scan, from an IP
It was not
scan.
designed to handle traffic at high rates.
Well, I mean, I think it was Brian O'Hara. He was telling me that he did an audit, and I think it was a hydroelectric plant. They had something running on NT4, and they're like, you cannot do anything to this because if it stops running, things go bad.
It's like Lost. You have to type in the code every 30 minutes.
yeah.
Brad, do you live near a dam out there in Colorado?
He might.
I do not.
Okay, good, because apparently that's
It's
bad
it's
things
bad.
going to happen at the hydroelectric
Well,
plant.
I mean,
This was one of those depressing episodes today where everyone, our
it's just
our blood
doomsday
is gone.
scenarios.
Well, no. So Red Hat potentially taking over IBM. That's cool and
Yay.
exciting. If you're a Linux guy, I guess. I don't know.
Unless you're Ginni.
I like Red Hat.
I'm a Linux guy, but I don't
Ginni
use Red
Rometty.
Hat.
Not a good article for Ginni Rometty.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, yeah, because she's retiring and just getting like $200 million.
I was going to say
Sucks
they
for
had a
her.
golden parachute.
What is she gonna like? How's she gonna live?
Yeah.
She'll make do somehow.
She's a competitor. She wants to be in that fight. Yeah. Hey, so what's going on with you guys, Brad? You going to RSA, or you got any other shows or events coming up?
So, I mean, the biggest thing going on for us right now is that we're launching another product called Insight, which is more so targeted towards everybody else in the organization, as opposed to Project Aries, which is targeted towards your current and aspiring cyber professionals. So basically, this is a browser-based game. You can play it on your phone, and it introduces people to various aspects of the cyber kill chain, with the expectation that really this whole cybersecurity problem is an organization-wide problem. So Verizon released an article recently that basically showed that over a third of breaches kind of originated from somebody inside the organization doing something they probably shouldn't have, perhaps because they didn't know better, like falling for phishing emails, or bringing some USB key they found in a parking lot somewhere, and then plugging into their machine at work. And so what we're trying to do now is kind of broaden our scope and really target cybersecurity education for everybody. So that's really exciting to us right now.
So even people like me on the marketing team could actually utilize this product?
Especially people like you on the marketing team, in fact.
Specifically.
Yeah, again,
I've been picking up these USB keys in the parking lot for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's bad?
Is that wrong?
So, I mean, most people outside of the field, if you're not really thinking about this stuff day to day, it's not really expected that you would know what to watch out for, that people might go try to look through your recycling to find pieces of paper with credentials on them, or any number of these kinds of things. And so because we've probably all been in some form of awful PowerPoint kind of boring presentation for these things, we know that this doesn't really work. People don't really retain that information, and it kind of leaves them the second they leave the room. And so by making it a game with more like interactive lessons about like how to spot phishing emails, and what is a VPN, all these kinds of things that we might consider to be pretty entry level in industry, we're hoping that we can better everybody's kind of cyber awareness and reduce the overall incidence of these problems. And then if people really like what they're learning and they want to get involved, then we can kind of point them towards the Project Aries battle rooms and whatnot to step up their ability.
Yeah, Don and Daniel actually did that PowerPoint presentation here at the office, and I can attest that you are right. It just right when you leave the room.
PowerPoint, did we?
Did you have a PowerPoint?
I don't think we had even a single slide.
Yeah, not a single slide.
We tried to.
I don't know. I wasn't.
That shows you how well he paid attention.
I was not looking.
He was like, I was too busy uploading this USB key I found.
Yeah. Again, no one told me not to, or
Yeah.
you probably did in that meeting, but I
Yeah.
wasn't paying attention. All right. Well,
So it doesn't count.
thank you very much, Brad, for taking the time with us today. And if people want to find out more about these, what's the website they can head over to?
They can just head over to circadence.com.
All right, and that's with a C. I should just point that out. CIRCADENCE. Circadence.
That's the way we spell Circadence.
Yeah, just making sure. So we have.
Thank you.
What are the bugs we have here?
Bugs?
Oh, cicadas.
Cicadas. That's different.
That is different. Yes.
Is that with an S?
They make an interesting noise, though.
Is that with a C?
No, it's with the C. Yeah.
I knew that.
I think it is, yeah.
That's why I have the Grammarly plugin on my
That
my
will help you.
Chrome we're gonna
we're gonna republish this podcast under like the history of words, aren't we?
Yes.
This is
We did a lot of etymologies today.
I'm
welcome to Technado, the grammar podcast.
And we kind of dipped into entomology with cicadas.
Well, we glossed over what he said when you were saying what a PLC is. You kind of that word. Can you say that one more time, please?
PLC. It was like a hip hop band in the '90s.
You don't remember?
Yeah, but say the word again.
Fisheye. And
I can't remember the.
I know, but you were like programmable.
It's programmable. Programmable.
Yeah. All right. That's a word. All right.
Yes,
Well,
it is a word.
Programmable Logic Controller. PLC. Fact.
that makes more sense. All right. Want to let you know about a couple of things we have coming up. Actually, we have next week. Well, this week, if you're
time
it depends on when you're listening. Yeah.
At some point.
You want to keep going?
This comes out Thursdays now. You're right. We are doing the cloud dating game for Valentine's Day here at IT Pro TV. We're going to have 3 cloud providers and 1 lucky contestant who is interviewing them and choosing her perfect fit. So that's going to be exciting. So head over to the live stream on IT Pro TV. If you're not a member, you can sign up there and watch that. Don's going to be the host. That's going to be very exciting.
Isn't Justin going to be one of the contestants?
Justin is, for the fans of Justin, he will be
I
AWS.
recommend it. He always breaks his A game for stuff like
We're going to
that.
have Google Cloud. We're going to have Azure as well. So no IBM Cloud this time.
No.
Did not make the cut. It's like the Democratic debates. Like you did not reach the 1% threshold. You were not invited to the dating game. We've also got some webinars coming up. We have Reimagined Performance Monitor. That is Thursday, February 13th, so the day before the cloud dating game. That's going to be with Mike Roderick and Anthony Square as well. So head over to itpro.tv/webinars and you can register for that one. You can also check out all of the on-demand webinars from the past. We just did the Help Desk Pro. We did DAS.
Part 2.
Part 2. And Part 1's there too. You know, you can watch the whole series.
Watch them out of order.
Binge the whole, yeah.
Have a good time with it.
You do you. And while you're on the internet, head over to go.itpro.tv/Technado, where you can find a 30% off coupon code for all of your IT Pro TV viewing needs, and that works for the lifetime of your subscription to IT Pro TV. You can also request a demo for your team, and that's all over at go.itpro.tv/Technado. And does technado point to it points to the general Technado page, right, with the RSS feeds and all that?
It does, although I just learned
Uh-oh.
that redirect does not work with HTTPS.
Oh, no.
So if you just go to technado, it does come over, but
You had one job.
and then well, apparently some limitation in the forwarding.
Really?
Like you can't forward between
HTTP and HTTPS?
yeah, or they just I guess they wouldn't have a valid certificate
Gotcha.
for technado.
So we have to buy a certificate
Yeah.
at Technado.
It's a new system for me. I've never bought anything from
Yeah.
the official registrar of the Dominican Republic, so I'm learning,
Everybody's got their own way of doing something.
branching out internationally.
All right.
You're expanding your skill set, Don.
Hey, and finally, when you get over to technado, you can see all the subscribe links. So remember to subscribe, or on YouTube, you can do it there. And send us any listener questions. Use the at ITProTV hashtag, or at ITProTV as the Twitter handle, and we'll answer any of those questions that we get from you there on the internet. We'll do that next week.
Good times.
Yeah. Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks again, Brad, for joining us, and stay warm out there in Colorado.
All right, will do. Thanks. Glad to be here.
All right, and thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you next week right here on Technado with Don Pizzette.